All right. So I would love to just start with a quick word of prayer, and then we will dive into what I have for us this evening. Dear Lord, thank you so, so much. Thank you for this time. Thank you for technology. Thank you for Zoom. And I just thank you for the beautiful souls and the families that are represented on this call. I just ask right now that you would increase, that I would decrease, and let my words be your words. I thank you for the opportunity to share and the honor of the opportunity to share. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so I'm going to dive in here, and I will save some time for questions at the end. So please just stick with me, and obviously we'll keep it relatively informal though. So if something just strikes you right away, feel free to interrupt. I promise I won't be offended. I know most of you, and I'm so excited to see you. My name is Amy, and I am a mom of an adorable 8-year-old son who is now 99 pounds and almost 5 feet tall. And so he's a handful and very busy, but you see a lot of him on my feed. Been married to my husband, Nick Sr. Son's name's Nicholas, husband is Nick Sr. And we are going on 16 years this summer. And I am an office manager and a business manager for a family business that my parents have had for almost 30 years. And my husband and I both are a part of that now. And I spend a lot of time there. If you follow any of my stories, you see me sitting at my desk a lot. And that's a pretty cozy place for me. I also just obviously love Jesus. And I serve in our church. It's been a lot of Zoom marriage ministry stuff of late, but I'm a member of some ministries. I am in recovery from different traumas, and I'm just excited to be here with you tonight. The reason specifically that I'm speaking about this topic is I can say that for well over a quarter of a century of my life, in fact, pretty much as long as I can remember, but I can say it more than 25 years, I had struggled with weight, struggled with a very poor relationship with food, and struggled with any opportunity to have any kind of consistent exercise in my life. I was very much an all or nothing type of person, perfectionist. And so it was all in or completely nothing. As long as I can remember, like I said, food, body image, restriction, binging, literally to the youngest age that I can remember, back to about 4 years old, I can remember hiding and sneaking food. And in hindsight, after years of doing work, personal work, therapy, and what have you, I know that I have sought food for comfort for as long as I can remember. In 2016, a few months after turning 40, I was in a season of desperation. Those years, those decades of struggle with food and body image and under or over exercising and perfectionism had morphed into many different things. I had so far as a severe eating disorder in my teens and early 20s, swapped out the addiction to food for alcohol in my late 20s and 30s. Praise the Lord, I've been sober for several years from that, but still struggled with food and all of those things. And after turning 40, I was in a season of desperation, as I said, where I just thought, I don't know what I thought was going to happen when I turned 40, like I'll be finally grown up and those things would be behind me. I don't know. They obviously didn't change when I turned 40. And I was really just over it, and really to the point of despair, of on my knees, literally on the side of my bed crying, say, I can't live this way anymore. I don't want to live this way anymore. Lord, the next 40 years of my life certainly aren't supposed to be this way. And he really answered my prayer. He answered that prayer of desperation. I began a journey to positive health and wellness habits, healing, restoration, not perfect. And I'll speak to that here in a little bit, but he did answer my prayer, and it got started on a journey to healing. And after living in that bondage for so long, I just felt compelled to pay it forward, because the freedom that I began to feel as I continued on this journey was just incredible. And it felt felt and continues to feel miraculous. Much of what I'm going to share tonight is just that. It's nuggets of what I've learned during that journey over the last, gosh, over 4 years now, and I'm continuing to learn, and it's my goal just to pay it forward. Recently, Nick, my husband, Nick Sr., came down with COVID. Actually, we all did, but whereas Nicholas and I just had some body aches and a headache that Tylenol took care of, my husband became extremely ill. And after a few days of being diagnosed, he was rushed off in an ambulance, which was quite an experience because I didn't know if he'd be coming home. He actually had 2 different stays in the hospital, and it was a very, very difficult time. And the topic of this event is braving the storm, and I can definitely say that that is the most recent storm in which I have found myself, was having a husband who is actually a year and a half younger than me. He's always quick to remind me of that. Big guy, seemingly pretty healthy guy, but was literally floored with this virus. And we just didn't know how it was going to how things were going to turn out. Because I had been sharing already my wellness journey and this progress that I've been able to make, I continued sharing. It's just kind of what I do now, and I'll speak to that in a little bit. But I started getting questions, and I've had them come before, but I started getting more and more questions during this season. How on earth are you staying anywhere close to consistent with your health, your wellness, your self-care during this storm? Either the day after your husband was raced off to the hospital in an ambulance, and of course can't go follow him and sit with him in the hospital, right? Or, trying to manage a household with an 8-year-old who's wondering what's going on with daddy. And then there's also a family business that needs to be tended to, that I work in partnership with my husband. So now I'm wearing his hat too. I was humbled by the love and the support and the prayers. And I was also humbled by the folks who just reached out and said, you gotta just tell me what you're doing. How are you still getting up and moving your body? How are you even attempting to nourish yourself and to take halfway decent care of yourself during this storm? And so again, my prayer years ago became, how can I pay this forward? And that really came to me with all of those questions. How can I thank people for their endless support during this season? I'm thankful to say that Nick is on the road to recovery. It's very slow. We've taken a few steps back this week, but he is light years ahead of where he was, obviously. But I wanted to pay it forward. And who doesn't like lists? So when I was trying to think of how to present this, I thought, we'll just make a list, because that's how my brain works, and a lot of women's brains work that way. So, but it might not be COVID, although COVID's kind of hit us all in one way or another, whether or not a loved one has caught it. But we all face storms. John 16:33 tells us, in this life, you will have trouble. Thanks, John. Appreciate that. What I know is that, or what we know, and if 2020 taught us anything, is that we have very little control over much of anything in this life. And I can tell you that has been, I've certainly learned that lesson many times in my life, and that I learned that lesson once again in an all new way on January 2nd, when my husband was driven away in an ambulance and I couldn't follow him. I had no control over that. I couldn't even stand next to him as they were loading him in the ambulance because I had COVID. So what I do believe, and what I know is true, and I think a lot of us have learned this, if anything, just in this last year, is that we don't have a lot of control over much, but we have control over this. We have control over ourselves. We have control over our responses to things that we can't control. We have control over if we choose to move our bodies, if we have control over if we choose to drink water, if we choose to nourish ourselves with healthy food. We have control, for the most part, over how much sleep we get, although, you know, that can be questionable depending on the season of life that we're in. So that is an overall answer to how I try and attempt, and for the most part successfully stay consistent, is I just try to take control over this, whether that's physically, mentally, spiritually, or emotionally. That's about all I have control over anymore these days. But that being said, like I said, I promised a list. So I'm going to dive in here to my top 10 lists of remaining consistent during the storms of life. Some are a little bit deeper than others. And so we'll dive into a few of them a little bit deeper. Some go much quicker. All of them are important, but let's dive in together and just roll with me. So number one, for me, a higher power must help. I have to admit, and I'm saying this in present tense, okay? Because I still have to do this because I'm on this side of heaven and a recovering control freak. But I have to admit that my willpower is not sustaining. My willpower is only going to get me so far. I spent many decades of my life making New Year's resolutions year after year after year. And I would say the willpower got me to maybe Super Bowl, maybe Super Bowl Sunday. And that was back when it was in January, before we had more teams. I'm dating myself. Anyways, so number one, a higher power must help. My willpower is not sustaining, but God is. In fact, I have this Post-it that goes with me everywhere now. I just came across this scripture the other day. Again, I love how scripture just comes back into your life when you need it. And it went on my yellow Post-it. I'm a Post-it queen, and it goes everywhere. Matthew 19:26 reads, Jesus looked at them intently. I love that. Can you imagine Jesus just, and said, humanly speaking, it is impossible, but with God, everything is possible. In 2016, I was struck that I had turned over everything else in my life to the Lord. Would take me a long time and a very boring stories to tell you all the seasons it took me to turn over my marriage and my finances and my motherhood and my family and my work and all of that. But I realized in that moment of desperation on the side of my bed, literally in tears on my knees, I was convicted with the idea and the truth that that was one area I had kept. And I know that I had kept it because there was years and years of what I considered failures, failed diets, whatever, shame. And I also had kept the lid on that because it felt selfish. It felt selfish to pray for help with my health, with my food, with my exercise, with my body image. It just felt like, well, there's so many people that have real problems, you know. I mean, not just the beautiful children we see on TV when the commercials that are starving across the globe, but you know, the neighbor next door whose husband just passed away. And you know, that was so selfish and how narcissistic of me. Well, you know what? He told me he wants all of us. And scripture tells us he wants all of us. So I finally, literally, again, in that moment in that season of desperation and in that moment, just said, just take it all. Take it all. And I still have to go back to this. Like I said, I still have to go back to this. Sometimes monthly, sometimes weekly, sometimes daily, sometimes moment to moment. Recently, full disclosure, coming off of this very, very turbulent storm of my husband fighting for his life with COVID. And you know, that kind of that calm after the storm when you kind of catch your breath and you're like, oh my gosh, okay. Recently in that calm, I'm in that moment to moment time where I'm needing to be reminded and to remind myself that I can't do it all on my own. Because as women, I know many of you, all of you can probably relate to this. Crisis happens, we go into mode, we put our head down, things get done. But then all of a sudden the storm stops for a bit. There's a little bit of a calm, and then it's like, wait a minute, maybe I need to like think about something about myself. And oh God, I can't think about myself. And So the whole cycle then starts of shame and all of that again. So I have to go back to number one. A higher power must help because my willpower cannot sustain me. Number two, a lot less deep, but just, and not as important, but very important. Don't turn me off when I say this because I know you've heard it. Stick with me. Water. You have to be drinking water. Okay. I know that sounds cliche and it sounds like, oh, okay, I came here to hear this. Yes, it is so important. I promise you, unless there's some kind of medical condition that I shouldn't speak to, which of course you guys know I'm not a medical professional unless you need help with your pets. I'm a registered veterinary technician, but other than that, water is so much more important than we understand it to be. Not going to go into all of the anatomical part, but when you hear that adage nowadays, if you have heard it, that we should be drinking half of our body weight in ounces every day, that is a minimum. I'm telling you, that is a minimum. And I know, because I know some of you on here, that even getting to that half, those ounces of half your body weight a day is tough. I promise you that barring some kind of outside medical condition, if you would commit to do that for 10 days, I promise you, you would see enhancements in your health and your wellness. You'll drop bloat. If you have excess weight, you'll drop a pound or two just because your body won't be holding on to water, wondering if you're going to be starving it again and dehydrating it. Whatever you can do to get water in. Now, my colleagues at my family business and my close friends, they tease me all the time because I pee all the time. I mean, I just pee all day. It's crazy. But you know what? It is so important. In fact, the nutrition lifestyle that I follow, one of the hashtags is water first. We drink water before we start eating our meal. We drink water before we have our cup of coffee in the morning. I drink water. I always share about my Super Mama juice. I have at least 18 ounces of water before I drink my Super Mama juice at 5 o'clock in the morning. So I'm not telling you need to start drinking as much water as I do tomorrow, but do yourself a favor. If you do not already get half of your body weight in ounces in water every day, go buy yourself a pretty water bottle. It's a great act of self-care and figure out a way to do it. There's apps, free apps that will remind you to drink water. You can put timers in your phone. I can't tell you how much this is an easy hack to bettering your health and wellness. Number three, this one also will come as no surprise. If any of you follow my stories or have been in my life for any amount of time, you know I'm going to tell you to move it. Move your body. If I did not have my daily routine of some kind of physical exercise, and I'll speak to that in a moment. I'm not expecting you to go, crazy here. If I did not have that during these last several weeks, my mental health would have gone into the toilet. I use the hashtag happy brain bugs all the time because I believe in them, I feel them, I know them. Now, I'm really talking about endorphins, but I think happy brain bugs just sounds better. So it is crucial that you find a way, you figure a way to move your body every day. Now, for me, many of you know that I work out at home. I use a streaming platform. I call it the Netflix of fitness. It has hundreds and hundreds of workouts on it, dozens of complete programs that just tell me what to do and they're world class, and I do it at home. My husband, on the other hand, of course, up until he became very ill, he is more of a guy who likes to go to a gym. He has a small kind of family-owned gym that he goes to. We like to support local, and that's his time to go, and he has a semi-private trainer that he works with there. Other people like to run. Other people like to bike. Other people like to walk the dog. Other people don't like to do anything. But therein lies some room for improvement. Even if it's 10 minutes of yoga every day, getting your body moving. We were meant to be mobile creatures. We were not meant to sit in a chair all day. I promise you, for your mental health, if not for weight loss or body size or anything like that, for your mental health. And again, we're talking about braving the storm. You've got to figure out a way to move. I am so grateful that before my husband fell so ill and things got so scary and so dicey, that I had already committed to a new program that came out in the new year. And I had committed to a large group of women that were expecting me to show up. So I had to press play, and I am so thankful for that. I show up 5 days a week, 30 minutes a day from home. All the equipment's at home. I get a great workout in and I'm done. There's no commute to and from the gym. I can hop in the shower, maybe dry shampoo, body spray, depending on the day, and I'm done. But I can tell you that before I started with my the streaming service that I use at home now, I ran and I would take the dogs out, and the fresh air was incredible. So moving and finding something that you will do consistently is so, so important for those happy brain bugs. All right, so number 4, know thyself, don't test thyself. So I had to throw in a little like King James wording there. So know yourself, don't test yourself, okay? Real life example. When crisis happens, when the you know what hits the fan in my life, something in my brain says, you want sugar, you want a donut, you want cookies. I don't know what that is in my brain. Is it genetic? I don't know. But I know myself well enough now to know that when discomfort, when stress, when something goes wrong in life, which we know it will, when that happens, I want to medicate it in some way. And for the most part of my life, that medication has been some kind of food, and it's not broccoli. Okay, I actually really like broccoli, but when I'm looking to medicate, I'm looking to medicate with cake, cookies, donuts, Snicker bars, okay, things that are going to do nothing for me. So when I say know yourself, don't test yourself, know thyself, don't test thyself, I'm not going to, especially in a season of a storm, I am not going to go to the donut shop that's named after my 2 godsons and treat myself to one donut. Because what I know is that one donut is going to become 2, it's going to become 3, it's going to become 7 by the end of the day or the end of the week. Okay. And now I'm not demonizing donuts. Okay. Like I said, there's a great donut shop in Albuquerque named after my twin godsons. It's incredible. They're great. But once I know that about myself, I'm not going to test myself. I mentioned to you that I spent a period of time really medicating with alcohol. And when I went through the steps to recover from that, obviously a huge thing you do is say, okay, if I know that I can't have a drink of alcohol, I should then not go to a bar, right? So I'm not going to test myself by going and sitting at a bar. So therefore, I'm not going to, in this season, test myself by going to the frozen food section where all the Ben & Jerry's pints of ice cream are in the grocery store, okay? Whatever that looks like for you, what that looked like for me in this season and in previous storms that have happened is I literally go to the pantry or to the freezer and take out the stuff on which I know I will binge. Now, whether or not my son and my husband like that, I don't know. But you know what? It's better in the waste can than wasting it by just stuffing it in my body. And if they really need cookies and ice cream, they can go get some, right? That's a little bit of tough love there. But whatever your thing is, if you know, for example, that there's going to be a birthday party at your office during lunch, and there's going to be a big Costco cake there that has the best frosting in town, maybe you don't go to the party if you know that the cake is going to trigger you to a downward spiral of other bad habits. Again, I'm not trying to demonize the cake. If you can have a piece of cake and enjoy it, please do. I'm not in a season where I am eating a lot of processed sugar and stuff like that right now. So depending on how I'm feeling right now, that day, if there's going to be that party with the frosting on the cake, I have to look inward. I have to know myself and not test myself. Because again, what did we say in step 1? My willpower is going to last only so long, right? It's the whole reason that diet fads are what they are, but his power will last longer. So if I harness his and use that wisdom, we'll get there. All right, so number 5, really during a storm, I'm just trying to keep an eye on the time because I want to be conscientious. When we are in a storm, when we are in crisis, especially, I mean, I believe this all the time, but especially at a time when we are in crisis, we have to choose foods that fuel us, foods that are whole. I call them God foods because they're like, I always envision like, this is what food must have looked like in the Garden of Eden. It's not gone through the ringer or gone through some machine or added some chemicals to it that are weird. We have to choose foods that fuel. Many of us in crisis, in a storm, or just who have encountered a really bad day, we will use food thinking it will give us emotional healing when it's actually just emotional eating. The best thing we can do in crisis is stay healthy, right? We've got, I certainly was so glad I didn't fall ill with COVID whenever my husband did, but even still, I don't want to catch a cold. I didn't want to get ill. So I wanted to feed myself with whole foods, with God foods. Now, there's a caveat to that. I'm a busy gal. You are busy, ladies. I can't farm my own food. I don't plant and harvest and bake my own bread and all of that. If you do, that's fantastic. That's even better. Goals. I can't. I do my very best to, go grocery shopping. Of course, for a while there, we were using grocery delivery service because we couldn't leave because of the quarantine. And I still really am kind of in love with that service. We use a lot of different things to help us. I try to buy organic, but I'm not able to get it right all the time. I will say that I try to follow what's called loosely like a 90-10 rule, where I'm eating 90% of the time is clean, whole God foods. And then the 10% is like, I can't bake my own bread. I'm sorry, there's more than 5 ingredients on this bag of sandwich bread, but it's just going to be what it is. I also firmly believe in a whole food supplement that I drink and have had almost every day, literally have missed less than a handful of days in 4 years. And it is incredibly tasty. I drink it every single day. It's full of superfoods. It is full of adaptogens, prebiotics, probiotics, so much protein, so much fiber. Don't call it a protein shake. It's actually a whole food supplement. I used it as a meal for my first year of drinking it. And it just so happens to help stave off sugar cravings and helped me break my sugar addiction that I was in 2016. So I use that to fill in the gaps. And some of you know what I'm speaking about, excuse me. It's called Shakeology, and I drink that every day just to make sure, because of course, again, I want to have a garden. I'd love to have a farm. I'd love to have a plow and do it all myself, but it's just not going to happen. So this is a way for me to ensure that I'm filling in all the gaps of my nutrition. And also, on a side note to that, over the years, just really punishing my body with either poor eating habits, restricting or binging, or just over exercising or no exercising. I really am at a stage now where I want to heal my body. And I know that that's what this supplement is doing for my gut and the microbiome and all of that. It's just really trying to kind of undo some of that damage I've done. So choosing foods that fuel, and if you need to, find something that fills in the gaps when you need it. So number 6, this is a big one. I talk about it a lot. It's accountability. Accountability is so important because we are not meant to do life alone. We just aren't. But why is it that so many of us, especially as women, we want to go on this health and wellness journey on our own? I know for me, it was because I had lost and gained and lost and gained and lost and gained so many times that I was like, I kind of felt like a joke sharing about my next endeavor because they'd be like, well, it was gonna, whatever, or again, I just felt very selfish about it. And I felt shameful, or if I was doing, and I did them all, the fads and the wonky things and this pill or that years ago, you're almost embarrassed to even say that you're doing that. And so it becomes a secretive, shameful thing, again, that you keep the lid on, or at least I kept the lid on, and including keeping it away from God. So then I'm even more set up to fail, because doing anything solely on my own is just, so once I was motivated and compelled to just blow the lid off of that, as I shared earlier, I was so compelled to pay the experience forward. The experience for me included a very beautiful, small, private group of women that were just on a very similar journey. And somehow, some way, I decided that I wanted to do the same thing. And so one day, in the middle of a run with my dogs, in the middle of a Mariposa Park at the bottom of the basin, which is a gorgeous spot, I just went live on my Facebook page and said, I'm going to start this group. And if you've ever struggled, come join me, because we can struggle and fail forward together. And that's how Team Fierce Fit and Faithful was born. And I can tell you that the community that has grown out of that ridiculous live sweaty video with my dogs in the background is beyond anything that I could imagine. The ability to come and be vulnerable and to share, especially during storms, is something that I didn't know was possible when it comes to this. And let me just tell you, I've been involved in church ministries. I've had great friends for many years, but this was something that I had just held so close to my vest with such shame and secrecy. When I took the lid off that and brought it to light, took it out of the darkness, I realized I was not the only one. There were so many of us that were doing the same thing, spinning our wheels, doing the same thing alone. And now we just, fumble through it together. And there's been some amazing strides. I mean, we're talking so many pounds and inches lost. Some of it we gain a little bit back, and then we come. I just went 2 weeks ago live in my group, and I said, okay, this calm after the storm has come, and now I'm kind of spinning. I need some accountability. And I joined hands, I linked arms with one specific beautiful soul, and we meet up every day for like 30 seconds via Facebook Messenger and just love on each other, because we're in the same season. I would not have that without this community, without this accountability. I can tell you that I woke up the Sunday after my husband went to the hospital on a Saturday, the second time, and saw a screenshot of our team praying for us, praying for the Millers. They did a group prayer session via Zoom just because they knew that we needed it. And they actually were praying for me so that I wouldn't lose my what. I mean, it's just humbling. But beyond that, I just have to say accountability. And so you, of course, please know that the invitation is there for you to come and be a part of Team Fierce Fit and Faithful. There's so many different avenues and ways to get involved. If that's not your jam, or if you have something else in mind, latch on to it, because again, we are not meant to do life alone. Even if it's one soul that you can be honest with and you can share with, and you can say, yesterday sucked, or yesterday was awesome, and you have someone cheering for you. Oh, it's just beautiful. There's no words to put together how mind blown I am of what this community has become. So accountability is a big one for me. Now, number 7 is a little bit dicey, because it's not so much something that we can adopt in a storm. Well, I mean, I guess you could, but it would be very difficult. But what it is it's committing to stick to a plan. Now, hear me out here. This has become so crucial to me in these last several weeks, and I've seen it play out. So again, it's not really possible to adopt a plan when you're in crisis or you're in a storm, because we're just doing it. We're getting through, and as women, we're really good at it, right? But this is why I believe, and I'm a huge advocate of finding a plan that works for you ahead of time. And I'll speak to what that plan, what I mean by plan here in just a second. We find what works for each of us individually, because we're all individual souls, each created differently. Have that plan, because when a storm hits, even if you had some New Year's resolutions, goals, or you had a plan that you picked that you were going to follow, when a storm hits, when a crisis hits, let me just say this, maybe this sounds familiar to you. I've heard myself say, well, that's not going to do it. That's not going to work now. Oh, to heck with this. Well, I'm not even going to try with everything that's going on now. When actually, in all truth, that is the most crucial time to stick to a plan, because it's the plan that's going to help you stay consistent. And that's part of this, right? How do we stay consistent with our health, wellness, and self-care during the storms of life? So you have a plan. Now, the plan can be a lot of different things. I love that in Proverbs 15:22, it says, without counsel, plans go awry. So if we don't have a plan for anything, you know that the outcome looks much differently. For me, I do really well with having a plan for my nutrition, with having a plan for how I'm going to move my body, and with having a plan for my accountability. Now, fortunately, because I have my workouts and I use my at-home streaming service, then that's kind of taken care of for me. And I partner, as many of you know, with Beachbody, and they're always coming out with new and exciting programs. And so there's always something new or something I love from the past that I can go back and do again. And right now we're in the middle of a lot of us in the middle of a program called 9-Week Control Freak. And it's insane, but it's awesome. And I'm excited. I'm excited to finish that and see, you know, how much strength I've gained and endurance and how things go during this 9 weeks. And then after that, who knows? I might do another round of Bar Blend, which is like my spirit soul program, or we'll just have to see what's coming. But for me, I know that that is my plan. There's going to be something there. And my plan for accountability is webbed right into that, because I ask my team to do it alongside me. So on the days I don't want to show up, on the days that I don't feel like it, doesn't matter, right? So that's my plan, and it's already been there. The nutrition lifestyle that I follow, I already mentioned the whole food supplement that I drink every day to fill in the gaps of my nutrition and keeps my GI tract going. I follow a nutrition program called the 2B Mindset. And for me, it works really well because it's really based in intuitive eating. There's not any kind of counting or restriction or measuring, that kind of stuff. It's really getting to understand why we choose the foods that we choose and when we choose them. For emotional eaters or folks that are struggle with food addiction, it's a great program. So when Nick got COVID and he became very ill, and I still have an 8-year-old son, and we still have a family business, and I still have a team that I want to show up for, and all the things, I didn't have to think about, oh God, what am I going to do? I already knew what I was going to do. And instead of saying, oh, to heck with it, my husband, he's in the hospital, my gosh, we don't know what's going to happen, I'm going to throw it out the window and go buy, the Cheez-Its and Diet Cokes and everything to just get through this time. That was the time that I dialed in more to the plan. So of course, I'm more than happy to talk with you all if you want to work on setting up a plan. If what I do sounds good to you, we can work together. But the point is, the key is to figure out what works for you and be ready to commit to it, and commit to it no matter what. If you're on the plateau or if you're on the hill or in the valley, that's your plan. I do want to say a quick caveat before I go into number 8. Perfect. Plans don't mean perfection. This is something I'm just throwing in. It's not in my notes. I have to have notes, otherwise I'd keep you guys here all night. Plans don't mean perfection. I say this a lot in Team Fierce Fit and Faithful. We are all about progress, not perfection. I spent 30 plus years of my life seeking perfection. So therefore I spent 30 plus years of my life feeling like a failure. Did I enjoy some treats during this last storm? You better believe I did. Did I miss a workout or two during this storm? You better believe I did. There are 2 days that did not get marked off on my 9-week control freak calendar. Am I going to do my best to get them made up somehow during this time? Absolutely. But if I don't, I'm not a failure, because there's 48 workouts I will have finished. I'm not going to shame myself for 2 that I missed instead of all 50. So progress over perfection. If you can say that you have gotten your water in 5 out of 7 days a week, whereas you used to get it in 0 out of 7 days a week, that's progress. We're going to celebrate the fact that you got those 5 days in. We're not going to say I'm such a loser because I didn't get those 2 days in. Okay. So plan is important, but plan does not mean perfection. And I'm here to just tell you, there's nothing that's perfect on this side of heaven. Nothing. It's just not. That comes on the other side. And isn't that going to be great? Okay, so number 8. This won't surprise some of you because some of you tease me about what time I get up in the morning. Number 8 is your morning routine. Morning routines are going to look differently for each of us because we're each created differently. Okay, we all have different families, we're in different seasons in life, we have different jobs. So there's no one right way to do a morning routine, but there is a wrong way to do it. And the wrong way is to not have one. I promise you, the way you spend the first 30 minutes of your day affects and truly, literally lays out the trajectory of the rest of your day. I promise you. The first 30 minutes of your day does not have to include a workout. It doesn't have to include, a meditation or yoga stretches or 18 ounces of water. It needs to be whatever you need it to be able to start your day off in as much of a controlled environment as possible. Again, we can only have control over this. I can't control if my son wakes up an hour early or if my husband had a terrible coughing fit the night before. So, he's miserable, but I can control this. And a morning routine is so, so important. I've heard all different types of morning routines. I'll share with you mine really quickly. I get up super uber early, and I do that intentionally because I have to have quiet time. I just have to. If I don't, on the days that I let myself sleep in, and just decide, I'll catch up with it later, the rest of the day is just wonky. I get up super early. The first thing I do is I have to let the dogs out. But as I'm doing that, I'm drinking water. My pets demand to be fed pretty much the moment mommy wakes up. So I'm drinking water and feeding the pets. Then from there, I actually have a 5 a.m. done before the sun crew call that I log on to. And there's a couple other crazy souls like myself. And we meet at 5 o'clock in the morning just for a few minutes every morning. And we share praise reports, prayer requests, updates on life. And then we press play on our workouts. So usually while I'm talking to them, I'm sucking down my Super Mama juice, which is my pre-workout, which I adore. It's super clean. So if you guys don't use a clean pre-workout, if you use one that has chemicals or things you can't pronounce on the back, please let's talk, because I don't want you to have a heart attack. Anyways, so then I press play on my workout, and that's how I actually get moving. A lot of times though, before I press play on my workout, after I sign off with my quick little prayer accountability folks, again, there's that accountability piece, I actually will dive into the word. And it really depends on how my spirit is. If I'm coherent and functioning and I believe I can absorb things, I'll do my quiet time, which is what I call it, before I work out. And for me, it's pretty lengthy. I spend a good amount of time. I have a couple devotions that I work through. I read a couple chapters in the Bible. I have some affirmations that I work through in a journal. But again, it's my time and it's how I start my time. And I can tell you that even in those days that Nick was in the hospital, or even in the days when I was nursing him at home, taking care of him at home, and he wasn't even able, he was bedridden, I still had my morning routine looked a little differently, but it looked super similar. So whatever that needs to look like for you, and what it's going to look like for those of you that don't already have a morning routine, in most cases, is it's going to mean getting up earlier. It doesn't mean you have to get up at 4 a.m. Okay. But decide, if you normally are getting up at 6 a.m., you can get up at 5:30. I promise. Whether that means you go to bed 30 minutes earlier, or do what I did and go 10 minutes earlier every morning for a week, and then all of a sudden you're where you need to be. I promise you, if you will give yourself some time in the morning to get yourself centered, whatever that looks like. One of the gals in our team takes advantage of these amazing meditations, like world-class meditations taught by amazing teachers on our streaming workout service. She does a meditation first thing in the morning to get her head straight. And she's just beautiful. She's a cancer survivor. And I mean, that works for her. If I did a meditation first thing in the morning, I just fall back asleep. But so I use the meditations later in the day. But anyhow, morning routine is important. And number 9, a successful morning comes off of a successful evening. So you have to have an evening routine. Now, an evening routine for me is much different. I'm just going to be honest here. By the time it's time for bed, and Nicholas is in bed, and now in this season where, you know, I've got my husband kind of his medication, and he's, I don't want to say tucked in, he's 43 years old, but you know what I mean? The house is quiet, the dogs are ready to go to bed and everything. I'm ready to. I don't have a lengthy evening routine. That's not what I need. I can't do it. I have friends that do. I have friends that use those meditations that I spoke about. I have friends that do their affirmations at night. They do their Bible study at night because they're night owls. Me, no. My evening routine is about 5 minutes long, and it consists of filling up a tall glass of water and putting it in the fridge because I like cold water. So I grab that in the morning to start drinking my water. Just sitting there smiling at me, nice and crisp and clean. I put out my planner that has my affirmations in it. I put out my Bible study materials and a pen. And I also put my blue blockers because I use those in the morning as well. So I have those sitting there on a clean kitchen counter or little breakfast table so that when I wake up, even if 20 minutes after I wake up, everything goes crazy, because we all know we're only one phone call away from life flipping on its head, right? At least I walk into an environment that I set up the night before that feels calm and beautiful. And it takes me 5 minutes. 5 minutes is all it takes. So an evening routine. Again, that's going to look differently for each of us. If you're a night owl, maybe you do the stuff I do in the morning at night. But I encourage you to set yourself up for a successful morning by setting yourself up with an evening routine that works for you. The last thing, number 10, the 10th tip that I have for staying consistent during the storms of life is to give yourself grace. And know that there is no perfection on this side of heaven. So if today was flubbed up and flipped all around, tomorrow's a new day. If it weren't for his mercies being new every day, which we learn in the Old Testament, I don't know where I'd be. I mean, I'd have been done years ago, right? We give ourselves grace, whether it's a bad minute, a bad hour, a bad afternoon, a bad night, a bad day, a bad week. The most important thing is pulling that accountability partner, right? Stop, and we give ourselves grace. The best thing we can do is give ourselves grace, and the next step is to go back to the last place you felt like you were in a good groove. Just pick up from there. So if your day went wonky, but the morning was really great, ask yourself, what worked with my morning? I'm going to go back to that. If last week was great, but this week was wonky, ask yourself, what was I doing last week that worked so well? Okay, I'm going to know myself, give myself grace, and go back. Now, usually for me, when I am at number 10 and it's time to give myself grace and go back to the last place I felt like I had it, it means going back to number 1. And number 1 was saying, I can't do it in my own power. So the last thing I want to share is that if you want to get started with me now, right now is the time. Let me just tell you a quick, amazing God story. I mean, I just believe this is so super cool. So I felt felt compelled to put together this event. I just literally went on the calendar and said, okay, this is when it's going to happen. This is what time it's going to happen. And here we go. 2 days after I asked Devin, who's my young sidekick who puts together all my images and stuff, because she's a millennial and knows how to do things like that. After I started talking about this and posting about it and everything, I got an email from Beachbody that said I would be getting 3 promo codes this month for anybody who wanted to join my team, so you could save a little money signing up. So right now is the time. If you do not have access to the streaming service, which I call the Netflix of fitness, which is actually Beachbody On Demand. If you've not tried the whole food supplement, if you've not joined Team Fierce Fit and Faithful or any kind of accountability group, I got that email and I was like, really? Okay, confirmation. I'm feeling this. I'm feeling you, Lord. I got it. So I was like really excited to be able to share that with you. So if you are interested, if anything that I share that I'm doing resonated with you, it would be my honor actually to help you get started right now. And it's a great time. I mean, I believe any time is a great time to get started, but it's a great time to get started because you save a little bit of money when you get started. So the last thing I want to do is just close us out in prayer, and then I will stay on for questions or comments or any kind of feedback that you have. And I just want to thank you all so much for being here tonight, for just sharing an hour of your busy time with me. And that just means the world to me very much. So let's just pray out, and then we can chit chat if you'd like. Oh, dear Lord, thank you. Thank you so much for this time. Thank you for this opportunity to share. I thank you for the progress and the work that you have done and continue to do in my life. And I just ask that you would just be with each of the ladies on this call and the families and the households that each of them represent, Lord. I just lift all of this up to you in your name. Amen. All right, so feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions you have. I'm super excited to just be here. It's just wonderful to see your faces. And I thank you guys so much for giving me your time, and also just appreciate any feedback. And, you know, you can do that in any vein. You guys know how to find me. So, all right. Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, ladies, so much for being here. I really appreciate it. This is fantastic. Thank you, Audrey. So good to see you. Audrey is coming from an international visitor. Yeah, that's below 0 where she is, right? I won't complain about the 40-degree weather here. Thank you, Shauna. Thank you so much, Michelle. Thanks for being on tonight. I appreciate it. Ladies, you also know how to find me. You can message me on Facebook or Insta. Many of you have my email. I think most of you have my phone number. You know, I try to I'm getting caught up on life again, so it's not taking me days and days to get back with folks. All right, Shauna, get that water in. Pee all day, hashtag pee all day. All right, ladies, well, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. I will stay on. I know in Zoom land, especially when it's women, we sometimes feel rude when we sign off because we feel like you're, hurting feelings or something like that. But I know you're busy and you have places to go. I will stay on and I'm happy to answer any questions you have or just to chit chat. But I'm going to stop the recording. And if you do need to hop off and go get to the next thing on your to-do list or put on your next hat, I understand. And I will see you soon somewhere, I'm sure, maybe at 5 a.m. Huh?